And after a 3-month long hiatus, we are back with interviews with Seven Story Publishing, and our first author, once we're back, is Nika Beamon. Um, I mean, honestly, I don't tend to do any research before interviews. I like to learn with everybody else, so that's why, I like to just ask the questions and find out. It's better that way. But anyway, on with the first question. So, Nika, tell us a little bit about yourself. What is life like for you outside of, writing?
Well, I have no life outside of writing, which sounds kind of funny, but I'm a professional writer by trade. So I've been a journalist since I got out of college. So in 1993, when I got out of Boston College, I ended up going to work for a TV station. And so I've been in television ever since. So I started off writing everything from local TV commercials to sales presentations, eventually to specials, sports at some point, and now I work for local news. So I write every day of my life, 9 hours a day at my
Oh,
job. And then somehow for me, it's fun to write when I'm not at my job. So it's kind of going from one computer to a different computer. But actually, when I write outside of work, I usually write by hand. So I do
okay.
it a little really, really, really old school. I do it by hand and then I go back and type it in.
Oh,
So
nice,
I usually
nice.
do that. So there's a lot of writing in my life. So there's very little outside of that. Because I
Okay.
even write a blog when I'm not doing that. I've written blogs. I used to blog for the Huffington Post and some other sites, AOL, AOL as well, way back in the day for anybody who still remembers them. So I
Right.
spend a lot of time writing even when I'm not writing. Um, so that tends to be the most fun thing that I do is write even when I'm not writing. And then
Okay.
outside of that, I like to, I do fun things. I travel. I do lots of, I call them adventure weekends. I like to plan adventures. So
Right. Okay. All right. Nice. Nice. Well, we all wish that we had your dedication to writing. I mean, because but most of us that we do things outside of writing, even when we're at the computer sitting at the screen, we do everything but write. So like that's so yeah, that's man. And to write as a job, that is the dream job for most writers. And but I like what you said when you write it by hand because that's actually how I wrote my first novel. Like I wrote it by hand. I did
I feel
I had
I
different
feel
files.
it. I feel like I feel it more, maybe because I write all day, type all day. I think I feel like it's less personal to me when I'm writing by hand. It's more personal and I feel it a little bit differently. And then when I type it back in, that's the first revision of all the revision process. Because as I'm typing it
Right.
back in, I'm like, why did I say that? I was like, so I fix it as I go back.
Got you, got you. I had to improvise of mine. I just took some paper, folded it up, made like a little mini book, and then just
Oh,
started
sure.
writing like that. I didn't
Oh,
get into journals back then, so it was just. So
oh,
yeah, I
awesome.
definitely relate to that. All right. So what inspired like your first novel? Like what was the thing that got you, well, aside from, being in the writing industry and having a job, like what was the thing that, got you into that like first work, like that first fiction work that you
Well,
that you
I have
wrote?
an unusual life because when I was 20, I started getting very, very ill. I ended up being diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease. Well, by the time I started going to doctors, they were like, "Look, we don't know what's happening to you. They didn't at that time know how long I would live, so I had a different incentive than most people." Um,
Mm,
so by the time I was 25, I'd had a major breakup, or so I thought it was major at the time. My God, a heartbreak. And so I was moving back from Boston to New York, back home. And I was like, you know what? This is the time. This is it. I'm sick. I'm single. There's nobody but me. When else am I going to be able to like sort of take this leap? And so I decided then I was going to write my first book. I started reading about like St. Martin's Press that wrote mysteries and stuff. And I'm like, hey, I like mysteries. I'm a Murder She Wrote kid. My grandma watched that. She loved Jessica growing up. So maybe I'll try my hand at writing a mystery. So I started reading all the books I could about how to write mysteries. And at that time, there was an editor there named Ruth Calvin. And she took no unsolicited, queries or anything else. But I wrote her a letter and she actually answered my letter and basically said, go for it, give it a shot, see what you come up with. Um, And so she didn't promise me a contract or anything grand, so I don't have that great Cinderella story, but she did encourage me to keep going and keep writing. And she did read the few pages that I sent her. And so I was just stunned and amazed that that actually worked and that she read it. And so I started the book, and I realized that for myself, as I was moving home to be closer to my parents, that my nuclear family was very, very small, but my actual family was huge, and I didn't know these people. And one of the things she said was also, sort of write what you know, write the things that are familiar to you. And I said, here, how about I write a mystery about somebody who discovers their family tree? And so Dark Recesses was my first mystery, and it was about somebody who was doing family research and discovers a murder mystery in their family tree. And so that's where I started. And all the characters in that book are named actually after people in my family, so that I could sort of wrap my head around what their voice sounded like, what they would look like. And so all of those things, and the place it's set is in Suffolk, Virginia, where my father is from. And so all of those things helped me sort of put it together a little bit easier, because those were real things that I sort of fictionalized.
Okay. Got you. Well, that's a heck of an incentive, So a major illness, yeah, like that. It's like, look, we ain't got enough time, so let's get to it. And the family tree situation is, I think that's relatable to a lot of people. Like people just know only their nuclear family, their immediate family, but then they discover like, oh wow, I got like 100 cousins.
Right.
It's like, right. You go to a family reunion or a function, you're like, wait, who?
Right, who are these people? Like, exactly, who are these people?
All right. So that's definitely relatable. So, okay, so I think you covered like the third question I would have had, which is how do you come up with the characters? Because the characters were named after members of your family. So we're gonna go down a little bit to this question. So, what's the most difficult thing about being a writer, in your opinion?
Well, there are two things. I mean, finding the time, because we all, unfortunately, writing doesn't pay my bills. It just doesn't. And so I have to go to a job every day. So finding the energy and the ability to write outside of that and sort of still be creative and still find, the juice to keep going, and not just to write it the first time, but to revise it and to edit it. And then again, take the rejection and use that in a positive way to keep revising it, if your goal is to publish it, to get to a place where you've actually got something that's publishable either by you or by a publishing company. Like I said, because you still want to be proud of what you're publishing, even if you choose to do it. And so listening to those criticisms and understanding what you need to fine tune in order to get it in a way where when you put it out, you're proud of what you put out. Right. So, it's sort of, learning, finding the time, dealing with the rejection and putting it out. And then nonfiction to me was the hardest thing to write. Because I write all day about other people. And my first nonfiction book was about other people. I was actually not in it. So then when I finally sat down to write a memoir, that was the hardest. That was the hardest to me, because, sort of not only just reflecting about things and thinking about them, because I keep a journal too. So I write when I write. I write at work, I write at home, I write for fun, and I write a journal. So I'm constantly writing. It's just a part of who I am. But it was just sort of, getting out of your own way and sort of being unabashedly open and honest. And that was really tough for me. That was tough.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because it's like with writers, we don't tend to have lives that are like super eventful,
Right.
Like we tend to live pretty normal lives. But, unless, in your case, you had a major illness, going to major heartbreak, something that was devastating at the time that you kind of centered a piece around,
right,
to make it a little bit easier to kind of, flesh out a story from that. But I mean, yeah, like, and it's funny. You have a way of answering like multiple questions at once. So the last question is out the window. All right. So we're going to go to, maybe a question that's a little more fun. So what's the most unhinged thing that you've written in your work? Don't worry, we don't judge here. Just on a scale of 1 to like, okay, this might be a little.
I think my memoir is probably the most unhinged thing I wrote, because again, I don't really have a filter. I'm not one of those people. I don't really have secrets. If you ask me the right question, you're probably going to get an answer, where you expect someone to be more guarded. And so when I wrote the memoir, telling people about when I talk about a whole life, I don't go like I'm just a sick person. I'm a sick person who's in relationships. So that includes sex, sometimes, infidelity. That includes so many things that I think most people were not aware were going on in your life. And so to be
Right.
able to share that to people, with people were like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect to, get to this, and see this, or you to be honest about your boyfriend cheating, or being honest about the fact that you cheated, or being honest about
Right.
the fact that you wanted to, at some point you considered suicide because you were that sick. Those were things that people really did not know and didn't understand were really even going on, people that were in my life at the time. So for them reading it, it was like, well, wow, I didn't even realize that, and I can't believe you put that in there. And I'm like,
Right.
it's part of the story, and it's actually part of my life. So there's no reason to sort of hide anything.
Okay. Got you. I mean, yeah, a lot of people would leave certain stuff out, that would possibly put them in a bad light,
Right,
in a story because I don't know, everyone has this need to make themselves, the good person, rather
right,
than just human,
right,
Like, I mean, everything that happens in the memoir is just part of the human condition,
right.
There's no real good or bad. It's just like, this is what
Absolutely
happened, like,
right. This is
I
how
did
I got
this,
here.
they did
Let's hope
this,
that I learned
like,
something.
right? The point of the story is to learn. So, what's one thing about writing, about being a writer that just drives you crazy? Like, it could be when you see it in someone else's work or like when you see it in your work. Like, what's one thing about being a writer that's just like, oh my God.
I think that people forget that it's a business. It's part of the entertainment business. It is a business.
Mm,
It is no reflection of your talent, no reflection on your story. It is no reflection on necessarily your gender, your race, or anything else. It is very hard to determine what stories, if in fact if you're writing a story to be a success or to make, $1 million, it is very hard to determine what story is going to actually do that. You do write what you love and hope for success later. But as I told someone, I figured I was successful the second I sold more than 100 copies, because when I added up everybody I knew, everybody I remembered from college, I'm like, I think I'm tapped out at after 100. And so when I sold 101, I was like, woohoo, some strange person decided that what I had to say was important enough to read. And that was good enough for me. So, you sort of have to be, sort of realistic about what you think success is and what that looks like to you. And don't judge it based on somebody else's career or something somebody else wrote, because there are lots of books that were successful that I read and I'm like, it didn't resonate with me. It wasn't for me. Doesn't mean it's not for someone. It means it didn't speak to me. Maybe
right,
something you write doesn't speak to them. And that's okay. We're trying to speak for the millions upon millions of people in the world, and everybody's experience and everybody's likes and dislikes are different. So never like tailor your work to what you think somebody wants to see. If you write it from your heart, it's going to resonate with somebody.
right. Got you. Definitely. I mean, yeah, like honestly, I don't even try to target everybody with my
Right.
writing. I just like, look, whoever like it, like it. Like
No.
whoever would read it, they're gonna read it. It's
Right.
just like, I write fiction, I write a little bit of nonfiction, but whatever my work resonates with is gonna find its people. So
Absolutely.
I definitely understand that, in that sense. So this question's not on there, but want to mix it up a little bit. So, have you had like book signings? If so, describe that experience. Like your first book signing.
I've had good ones and I've had bad ones. Back in the day, there was a store called Borders, and they used to allow you to do book signings all the time. I think what I found, whether I was traditionally published or self-published, was that, again, you've got to be your own salesperson. I had to do a lot of work in order to, sell books. And so book signings were part of them. So I had to call bookstores, set it up. I had to make my own posters. I'm like, oh, make cards to give away, things to attract people to your table, give out candy, all of this stuff. Sometimes you got people, sometimes you didn't, sometimes you didn't. And that's okay too. Like I said, I went and I would always read from my book. I would always stand up and talk. Sometimes I would, sort of heckle people walking through the store and be like, hey, come over. You didn't even look at the book. How do you know if you don't want it? You sort of, learn to put yourself out there in a way. I think, especially as a writer, where you're used to sort of hiding behind your keyboard, you have to put yourself out there in a way that I know I was not prepared at first and was not aware that you had to do. And so I found it very difficult at first, not because I can't speak in public, but I found it difficult to say, like, pick me. I think I felt it like the first time I was in a popularity contest, like pick me, come see me,
Right.
come, please buy it. Don't just pick it up. Can you buy it, please? But then I also thought it was weird when people asked me to sign it because I'm like, who am I to sign their book? Like it's just me.
Right.
And tomorrow I'm going to go back to my job and sit back at my desk, and nobody will even know that I did that. And so it's sort of this weird balance where you want people to buy it, you want people to see you, you want people to show up and listen to you read and ask you questions, but at the same time, there's a part of it where I love sort of the anonymity that I get to blend back into my life, and not have to do that, not have to kind of go out there and
Right.
put myself out there.
I think that's the reason most people get into writing, or most introverted people get into it for, it's like, I just want to sit at my keyboard and get paid for it, and then
Right,
just let the book be noticed. Like,
right,
hey, not me, just the book. If I got to do a speaking engagement every now and again, maybe, but then you find out, nah, you actually gotta,
exactly.
you
You
gotta
got to
go in
go out
front of your book. You got
there.
to go in front of your book and take some bullets,
Right.
like, and it's like,
I mean,
really?
I even went to one and somebody said, again, remember, most of the characters in my books are named after people I know. And I went to one signing and the woman's like, I didn't like this person. And it was kind of funny because I was like, hey, that's named after a real person. Like, I don't like really
Right,
appreciate, or I didn't like this character. I'm like, that's not a character. That's actually a human being. Like, you can't just say you don't like somebody. I'm like, sure they can. I mean, part of it is thankfully they had a reaction to your work. But at the same time, I'm like, hey, they're talking about people. Like, they're talking about people I know or people I put out there.
right. I don't know. I think there's a thing about that, it's like you can do it, but there might be a lot of backlash with putting people in the story and stuff like
Right.
that. That's kind of why a lot of writers would avoid that.
Right.
They might be a fictitious person
Right.
based on somebody they know, but they
Right,
wouldn't be
exactly. Not
the
really
person they
actually.
know in the book. They were like, oh, that's what you think about me? Like,
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. Wow.
I don't know. You gotta be a certain type of, honest in order to do that.
Well, when I wrote the memoir, I did let the people who I wrote about, because again, when you tell your story, you tell someone else's. Like, I can't tell about an ex cheating on me, and people are like, "Oh, that's that dude." And so I let them read the section that was about them beforehand. And actually, amazingly, nobody said change it. They were like, "Oh." It was interesting to see that they realized that you had a different perspective of, say, the same event than they had. So that
Right.
was interesting. But nobody asked me to change it. So at least they knew before it came out. I'm like, they're probably not going to like you when they read this. They're not going to like that. They're
Right.
not going to like this.
They're like, hey, they don't know me, so
Right, exactly.
do your thing. So do your thing. All right. Yeah, I mean, but pretty much, out of questions at this point in time. So we can kind of reverse roles for a little bit, make it a little fun. Do you have any questions for me as a, interview or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like I said, now the business has changed where you have to do these interviews and those things. Do you find that it's very difficult to get writers who are very introverted and, are used to like hiding behind characters to talk about, the writing process? Is that difficult to get people to want to like sort of show up and do that?
No, not really. Because like when I, go on social media and, just make the call, the people who want to do it are gonna do it. It's like, and the people who don't, obviously they don't.
Or
Like
like
I don't.
even social media, like it's like interesting because navigating social media, sort of like the image you put out there and the things you have to put out there. Do you ever find that people, find it difficult, like separating their personal persona from their writer persona? Because sometimes those are different.
Right. In my experience, I actually haven't because, like the type of people that I, do interviews with, they'll sometimes have a pen name and they say, this is my pen name. And then this is, my actual name,
Right.
and things like that. So I think, the people that come on, to interview with me, they already make that separation. So I haven't encountered anybody that would have a difficult time, with that.
So why found something separate for yourself? Is it that you wanted to work for yourself, or did you find that the industry didn't have a good fit for you out there?
It's, I guess it's more of a entrepreneurial thing where it's like, I'm not going to wait for somebody to accept me. I'm just going to, do it myself. Uh, because, it's like, the whole like story, the fundamental story of, being a writer in the business.
Right.
Oh, you got to go through years of rejection. Like, I
Right.
don't have years. All right. I'm not going to, get 1,000 doors slammed in my face when I can open one. It's like I can open this door. I'm going to go through this door, and I'm just going to see where it takes me. So,
That's
and
good.
plus, I like helping people. So, and I
Excellent.
know it's difficult to like get yourself out there in some way, shape, or form. Like even if, you know, and some authors are snooty. I'll be honest. They're like, oh, I'm not going to be seen by anybody. So what's the point? I was like,
Right.
well, the point is to get out there anyway,
Right.
because you never know who's going to see this maybe a year from now, 2 years from now. You're never going to know, like, hey, and somebody gives you a call, like, hey, you were on an interview at a channel, a couple of years ago, do you want to come on and do X, Y, Z? Like, you never know where it's going to come from. So it's
Right.
like, we don't know.
Absolutely.
So it's like, so you might as well just plant the seeds now so that when it's
Absolutely.
time to harvest, you got something to show for it.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic. No, that's fantastic. Yes, absolutely, because you're giving other people a chance for exposure. And like I said, you're right. You never know. Again, like I said about the book, you never know what one is going to go viral. You never know what you're going to say in your interview that may resonate with somebody else. It may not be 10 million people, but it may be that one person that you inspire to go ahead and write that book. And like I said, it may not be that they were, afraid of dying like me, but they may say, you know what? I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Now's the time to do it. There is no time other than the present. So just go ahead and do it. And so I find a lot of, because I work with a lot, again, I'm a journalist, and I find a lot of people are like, I always wanted to write a book. I'm like, then why didn't you do it? Like, what are you waiting for? When is
right.
that moment? I don't understand when that moment is. So it's interesting to me, the people who actually take the initiative and found something, or, create their own opportunity, and the people who keep waiting for some magical moment to come along that's going to transform their lives.
Yeah, it's, and plus it's like, hey, look, we do interviews, do book reviews and stuff like that. Like, I try to do everything I can to like help people, get their work out there.
So
We
why
even have,
writing? Why
yeah,
writing instead of like just podcasting? Like that's the new hot thing. Why writing? Or is that
I
like
mean, because, that's what I'm meant to do. Like,
it's funny because I tell people when I say like writing is as much a part of me as that I won like this crazy bubblegum award in second grade, and it said you're the best writer. I'm like, that's what I'm supposed to be. The
right.
only reason the only reason why, again, you went to college and do all those things. My mother's like, you don't know how to be poor. You're gonna need a job. Writers don't make any money. I was like, oh, they don't? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna need a job then. I'm gonna need a job then. I can't be poor. I was like, I can't be poor.
Right.
So but that was like the only, sort of, discouragement in the beginning. I'm like, yeah, if writers don't make that much money, how am I going to do what I love and still make money? And there are ways to do that, but it
Yeah.
does. Sometimes it recalls creating your own opportunity. Sometimes it's writing in a different form, but as long as you're doing what
Yeah.
your passion is, I think you're good.
Right. And here's the thing, I want to lift as many authors up as possible. It's like, as I ascend, I want other authors to ascend with me,
Right.
because the world needs, authenticity. It needs, fresh voices. And
Absolutely.
I want to be the vessel to which, those voices can shine through in any way possible. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. But anyway, that is pretty much it for this interview. Thank you for, coming on, as the first author, in like months. So yeah, you're breaking the ice, coming off the hiatus. And yeah, if you ever need to, reach out again, if you want to do a second interview after, you write a second book or anything like that, feel free to reach out. And yeah, we are back, and we will be coming back with more interviews very soon. So this has been Josiah Octob. I'm the founder of 7 Story Publishing, and this has been Nika Beamon. And we'll see you all next time. All right. Okay.